Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would like to continue on with our journey, our exploration, our discussion through 1970s disaster movies. And today I'd like to focus our attention, if I may, on a very interesting film. It's maybe described as a low-budget thriller. It might be seen as a type of human-made disaster in the sense that it's dealing with a virus, a contamination spread, and scientists trying to stop the virus, identify it, find out how it's spreading among the public, and hopefully finding a cure. But the race is against time, and to try to prevent more people from being contaminated and dying from this very fatal disease. So the work is from 1979, and the director is Ed Hunt, producers Ed Hunt and Barry Pearson, and also written by Ed Hunt and Barry Pearson. It went under a number of titles, I understand. For example, one of the titles is M3, the Gemini Strain. But for purposes of today's discussion, I will go by the title as it is shown on the DVD which I have, which is this. The film is called Plague. The DVD that I have here is a PAL DVD from the United Kingdom, Zone 2, and so this is, as far as I can tell, this was the only way I could get it on DVD, but it is a very interesting low-budget type of disaster thriller. Now, I've described it in the terms that I did previously in terms of the illness or virus and spread and outbreak and contamination and the race against time to try to find a cure. It's set in these low-budget tones, and it's set in the sort of cold, bleak outdoors. And I think the story is quite low budget, or the production is quite low budget, so we're not dealing with very big spectacle set pieces that involve a lot of special effects per se. And so what that means is that this is going to have to rely a lot on performance and also on the fear of the spread and the scary nature of this. And I think, of course, we live in the times that we live in at the moment in 2021, where, as we know, the world has been quite dramatically affected by the real world events of the current world health crisis and the pandemic. So perhaps films like Plague might feel eerily similar to real-life situations. Indeed, the film is dealing, as I say, with the notion of an unknown virus, something that is broken out of and is now unleashed, unfortunately, onto the world. And so and we're not sure, the characters are not sure how to stop this, and they're trying to find a cure and trying to design some kind of serum to act as an antidote to whatever it is that is affecting and infecting and unfortunately killing a lot of people here. So there are these eerie echoes with current world health crisis situations. And so perhaps a film like this might sit a little bit uneasy for some people. And if that's the case, that's okay. However, of course, at the same time, it is a low-budget thriller. Perhaps some people might look at it and see certain flaws in the production in terms of it being really low budget. And so it might not necessarily have the sense of spectacle as, say, other disaster films from the 1970s in terms of big sets, big set pieces, special effects, and a lot of stars in terms of Hollywood stars and the like. But I would urge you to, if you haven't seen it, to at least consider a film like this, because it is I think a very interestingly told film. I think the low budget aspects of the film help it because it gives it an air of a sense of seriousness, and while perhaps some of the scenes might not necessarily play out in the most cinematic way, shall we put it. There is a sense of earnestness and good-natured attempt. There's a feeling that when you're watching this, you get a sense that the filmmakers are really being earnest when they're trying to say this story or to present this story, and I think it comes through. And I think the performers here also take it very seriously. The proceedings have this type of connection, if you will, also with a number of past works. One of which I should bring up is the film or the story or the novel, which is called The Andromeda Strain. This film, Plague, has a number of plot devices that might seem to be similar to or otherwise echoing things that we see in the Andromeda Strain. I wouldn't call it a remake. I wouldn't call it a ripoff of the Andromeda Strain, because there are a lot of differences. But there are also some interesting little connections that one might call maybe homages or otherwise elements of plot that remind us that films like Plague and Andromeda Strain are within the same subgenre or subcategory of the disaster film, namely some kind of disaster involving an unknown virus or mutated virus of some sort, and it's up to a group of scientists to try to stop whatever it is. And there is also this idea of trying to understand it and also trying to find a cure. But unlike the Andromeda Strain, this film Plague is dealing with the real world, in the sense that there is a lot of stuff that's happening outside. And while there are interior lab scenes, there are also an equal amount of scenes that are taking place outdoors with the various characters in the public at large that are being affected, and we follow those stories as part of the general line of plot development involving the spread of the disease in the outside world. So while there are echoes, there are also elements that set this story and film apart from films like the Andromeda Strain. So it is therefore its own, I think, contained entertainment story. I should say also that the other connection that one can find with past works would be with something like, say, The Twilight Zone. I think the way that this film is presented, it has, I think, a real deadly seriousness. True, as I mentioned earlier, there might be some moments that could be said to be maybe not as cinematic as they could have been. Another way to describe it is maybe they might seem a little bit cheesy or hokey. But that's okay, because again, that's part of maybe the charm of watching a low budget film like this. And also that low budget quality has a way of suggesting a real down-to-earth seriousness that also lends itself to the Twilight Zone-like atmosphere of the story and as it plays out. Now, there are a lot of stings to the story. There are a lot of maybe twists and turns to the story. And so I think maybe the seasoned veteran when it comes to Twilight Zone fans or fans of that kind of science fiction genre might see some of the twists and turns that are emerging along the way, and that's perfectly fair. But there are also a number of things that happen that I think can be very surprising. So this is, I think, my way of trying to say in a general sense that this is a film that, while it might not necessarily be perfect, I think it is a film that feels earnest. It feels very much taking advantage to the full of its low budget qualities and turning what might have been negative aspects or weaknesses into positive aspects or potential strengths. And I mentioned the connections with the Andromeda Strain. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that among the cast of Plague is the performer and actor Kate Reid. And we recall that Kate Reid was a very memorable and crucial role in the Andromeda Strain, and indeed she plays yet another key and crucial role in this film Plague. It's a slightly different character than the one that she played in the Andromeda Strain, but it's still very effective and very important. And so that is another type of echo or calling back, if you will, to the great legacy of films like the Andromeda Strain. But it then reminds us that, as I say, this is part of that subgenre within the disaster movie broader genre overall. And I think it works. And It might not necessarily be at the top of one's radar, so to speak, when one thinks of 1970s disaster movies. But if you have not seen this, I would at least encourage you to give it a try. And it, as I say, it might not be the greatest film ever made, but it is still, in my view, very entertaining and quite effective. And there are some scenes that are actually very, very effective. And even the parts that are cheesy or hokey might provide a lot of entertainment value. And I think overall that's part of the charm of this type of genre film. And when it's done well, I think it's done really, really well. And so hopefully a film like Plague will be another place where you might find another example, another great example of films in the genre that we'd like to call 1970s disaster movies. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.